So she is on the ground in Gaza again, realizing what's happening there. Okay? And she is here to tell us what's going on and to give you an opportunity to help her help these kids. Again, the group is INARA, I-N-A-R-A. Arwa Damon joins us now. Arwa, can you see me? Can you hear me?
I got you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Good. You look well, you look safe, and that's what matters to me. Please educate us. What are you seeing there? What do people need to know?
Look, in the last 2 months, if it was even possible, the situation has become even more catastrophic, even more desperate. And you really get this sense that people are going to crack, and you're starting to see that. It's not just, as you were mentioning there, that less aid is getting in. It's an issue that also a lot of the trucks that are coming through, and if you look at the numbers, more than 2/3 of the trucks coming through are commercial trucks, which means that that produce is ending up on the market at unaffordable prices. I mean, I'm just going to give you one example. 1 kilogram of beef, so that's about like 2.5 pounds of beef, costs $60. Nobody can afford that. Things like tomatoes that are a staple for, the diet here, also completely and totally unaffordable. But put that also to one side, you have this growing problem when it comes to, looting and criminal activity regarding aid trucks and distributions. And you have smuggling networks that are beginning to, expand, smuggling in things like cigarettes. Because, Chris, one cigarette in Gaza right now, not a pack, one cigarette costs $25. And so there's the added challenge of not only are less aid trucks getting through, but moving aid trucks around Gaza is becoming significantly more difficult, not just because of the issues with deconfliction and the bombs and, the various permissions that are needed, but also because of this extra factor to be taken into consideration. And when you talk to people here, Chris, and this was something they had mentioned when I was here, 2 months ago, but now they're mentioning it even more. There is this very real fear of a slow descent into anarchy. And you feel these like dark, ominous undertones. And you sense that, everyone is they're exhausted. I mean, look, I was talking to one woman the other day, and she was saying, we're not resilient. We want people to stop calling us resilient. We were forced into this. We're not superheroes. We're tired, and we cannot take this anymore.
What have you seen there that surprised you, even with your experience and understanding of the context?
You never get used to these stories. I went to Al-Aqsa Hospital to try to get, a bit more of an idea of, the kinds of injuries and the kinds of treatment that they were going to be needing the long term, which is one of the things that UNITA focuses on. And there was a little girl who was in the hospital bed. She's 5 years old, and her aunt is with her. And her aunt was telling me that she had been flung from the building when the explosion happened. The little girl had been, and you can see her in those shots right there. She has this scar that runs down her chest like this. Her intestines, her guts had just spilled out of her. Her little brother is covered in burns. He's just a baby. What this little girl doesn't know is that her parents are dead. Despite that, Chris, what actually stayed with me from that whole interaction was the love that this aunt showed for her niece, for her nephew, and the fact that she promised that she was going to take care of them as if they were her own children. And there's another thing that we really need to be talking about over and over again, and the fact that the closure of Rafah was not just about the closure of one of the vital, humanitarian aid access points. It has also meant that since May 5th, no medical evacuations have happened. And so I met another little boy who also was injured, and he had taken shrapnel to the abdomen. It had basically, split apart his urethra. He's unable to go to the bathroom, and his bladder is basically kind of outside. Super high risk for infection. They tried to do 2 surgeries at the hospital. Both were unsuccessful. He needs to be medically evacuated. He is one of thousands of people, including children, who need to be medically evacuated outside of Gaza, either so that they don't die in Gaza or so that they don't end up with even more severe lifelong disabilities. You have, more and more people who are telling you stories about their loved ones, their parents who are dying because they weren't able to get their dialysis treatment. You have growing cases of cholera, diarrhea, hepatitis A, less access to bathrooms, less access to clean water, less access to sanitation. You listen to what doctors are saying, in the hospital corridors, and it's, hair-raising things like, yeah, this kid needs an amputation, but I'm thinking to myself, what's the point? Because it's going to get infected anyways, because there's flies all over the hospital. There's flies even, in the ICU. You meet another child, like I did when I was in there, who's got, metal rods poking out of every part of his leg, and he's moaning in agony because there aren't sufficient painkillers.
I want to ask you one other thing about the state of play, and then I want you to remind people how they can help your work there. So we just heard reports from the Israeli military that they believe, look, the obvious, you can't wipe out Hamas. It's an idea. And they are coming to the limit of what they can do tactically. How does that jibe with where you find the Gazan people in terms of their resolve to force Hamas to make this end?
Look, there's something that everyone needs to understand. The Gazan people have not been able to force Hamas to bend to the will of the people. We have to remember back in 2020, when there were demonstrations, against the way that Hamas was ruling, and they were cracked down on very, very quickly. We also have to remember that on October 6th, only about 25% of the population supported Hamas. When you talk to people right now today, and I have these conversations all the time, they are fed up. They are done with Hamas, and they were already done with Hamas. They do not want to necessarily see Hamas ruling Gaza again. They know what that means. They have had it with this idea of, Gaza is going to, stand strong, and Gaza can give martyrs. People here did not choose to be, martyrs for whatever it is, that Hamas is trying to accomplish, as much as they did not choose to be cannon fodder for the Israeli side. And so you do really get the sense that people want rule of law. They want a change. They want something, anything that is going to end this. But can they actually do anything to pressure Hamas to, take a deal, to alter the way that it's acting right now? They can't. And that is a reality that needs to be acknowledged at this stage. The other issue too, Chris, that people really should be aware of is that, yes, Hamas is an ideology, but that ideology that everyone is referring to is beyond what Hamas is. It's not necessarily the ideology of Hamas per se, but it's the ideology of needing to stand up to occupation. And so for a lot of people in Gaza, that ideology is, I'm going to fight occupation with my pen. I'm going to fight it by being successful. I'm going to fight it by getting an education. The challenge, though, is that, yes, the more death, destruction, and despair that is created, the more likely it is that in the future, it'll be a lot easier to recruit people into, armed force than it is right now.
I mean, you and I saw that so firsthand in what happened with the United States and its war on terror. INARA.org, www.inara.org. Don't just say you care about what's happening there. Show it. Help people like Arwa and her team get the help to the kids who need it on the ground. You can care about them, and you can still think Hamas is in the wrong. You can do both. Arwa, please stay safe. Thank you for the gift of your insight, and thank you for the work you're doing on the ground for the people who need it. Arwa Damon. Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.